I want to echo the protocol that has been established, so I will not go through the formalities of the protocol. I want to give a short tribute to Fidel today. And I want to start by saying that my brother Fidel Castro would have been very, very sad today. He would have been very sad to see what our brothers and sisters in Venezuela are going through right now. Fidel Castro would have been very sad to see that at this stage in the development of our region, that the US administration continues, in spite of what Barack Obama said, that a failed policy has to be removed. If the policy of blockading a country's economic, social, political, and other development has failed, you have to change the policy. For 60 years now, Cuba has suffered. And I mean, Cuba has suffered. I lived in Cuba for 6 years and I know what I'm talking about. Cuba has suffered under this abominable embargo. Yet, in spite of all those years of a failed policy, the American administration continues to implement that failed policy. There is no way that Cubans will bend as a result of the embargo. Cubans do not bend. I lived in Cuba for 6 years. I lived in Cuban homes. I spent more time in Cuban homes than at the university because I became a naturalized Cuban myself. You should see me walking the streets of Havana and old Havana with my Cuban boots and my sombrero. Cubans will not bend. And so Barack Obama was right. He said that the policy had to be changed. Yet they refused to change the policy. And so Fidel Castro would have been extremely sad today to see that in the belly of the 21st century, that old failed embargo that has been implemented against the noble and the historic and heroic people of Cuba, which has failed, they have now decided they're going to implement it against Venezuela. For the last 5 years, Venezuela has faced some serious sanctions, economic, financial, and other sanctions by the US administration. When journalists report on Venezuela, they speak of a Venezuela that's struggling and a Venezuela that's crumbling. They say that the economy of Venezuela is crumbling. But they never say why the problems exist. They refuse to refer to the fact that Venezuela is having the problems it's having today because of no less than 5 years of crippling sanctions from the world superpower, the United States. Of course, they tell you that when the oil prices fell, the problems began. But no, that's not the reason the problems began in Venezuela. Because there have been falling oil prices in so many oil-producing countries, including Nigeria. So many countries that produce oil. Oil prices fall, and the economies do not go on the downturn. The only reason our sister Venezuela is going through the economic tribulations it's going through now is because of the wicked sanctions by the American government. If they would allow Venezuela to be a normal country, Venezuela would be just like Cuba is today. And so, in my short tribute to Fidel today, I must repeat that I'm certain that the Fidel Castro I know, the Fidel Castro I had the pleasure and the privilege to meet personally, would have been very sad today to see the foolishness that continues to take place in our region, all in the name of toppling legitimately elected governments. And we have to get to the point, my brothers and sisters, St. Lucians in this room, friends from abroad, residents in St. Lucia, we have to get to the point where we say enough is enough. And it is particularly troublesome at this time because we have a madman in the White House. That makes it all the more troubling. And I tell you, Fidel Castro Ruz would have been a very worried man today as well. He wouldn't only have been sad, he would have been very worried. Because we have a madman sitting in the White House. And in the face of this madness, my brothers and sisters, no matter your political affiliation in the various parties, the political parties in St. Lucia and other countries of the Caribbean, we must realize one thing. It is unsustainable to believe that you will continue to oppress millions and millions of people just in the name of a policy that you think you must impose on people. Every country has a right to its self-determination. Cuba has showed it for 60 years, and Cuba will never bend. Likewise, Venezuela will never bend. Let me end my tribute, brothers and sisters, by sending some apologies, conveying some apologies for the Venezuelan ambassador who was unable to make it today, and she called me and asked me to convey her apologies. My brothers and sisters, these moments are very touching for me. And when Marlene shed a tear, I remembered my first few months in Cuba, when I had finally taken the the Spanish language fully under my belt. I learned Spanish in about 90 days in Cuba, because I must have been the most prolific limer in Havana. I went to Cuba to study, but what the Cuban professors told us was, study hard during the day and go out on the street at night and learn the language. I was the baddest limer in Cuba. I limed all over the place, drunk rum all over the place, in rum shops all over the place, learning to speak with my Cuban brothers and sisters. So in about 90 days, I was really habla en español. And Spanish means a lot to me, and I remember almost shedding a tear, just like Marlene did today, when I finally learned what the Cuban anthem really was saying in English. That Cuban anthem is one beautiful anthem. The Cuban anthem is a magical anthem. And I made a promise last year that I would be translating it into English so that it would be broadly disseminated among the people of St. Lucia. I did not keep that promise because I went back to CARICOM and found myself very busy in Guyana. I'm back in St. Lucia now. I'm not going back anywhere. I'm staying right here in my country. And I will be translating the Cuban anthem personally to make it available to every St. Lucian so you can see the beauty of that Cuban anthem. An anthem that almost brought a tear to my eye, the way Marlene had a tear to her eye today. Brothers and sisters, I repeat one thing to you. We have to, as St. Lucians and residents in St. Lucia and people who love St. Lucia and Venezuela, we have to stand firm and say, enough is enough of the foolishness. Barack Obama said it, that a policy that has not worked for 60 years has to be removed. And we have to continue to knock on America's door to tell them to remove that foolish policy. Let the Cuban people begin to live a normal life for once in 60 years. Thank you, brothers and sisters.